Hey YNR fans! Waving hand, welcome to YNR Trends, your go-to spot for the juiciest Young and the Restless updates, shocking spoilers, and all the drama you can't stop talking about. From surprise returns to scandalous twists, we break it all down for you, every day. So grab your coffee, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive right into Genoa City's hottest gossip. The waves crashed softly against the rocky shore of Nice, the Mediterranean wind carrying the faint scent of salt and lavender. Lola Rosales stood on the promenade, her sandals clicking against the stone path as she looked out at the water, trying to steady her nerves. It had been years since she left Genoa City behind. Years of convincing herself she had moved on from the betrayals, the lies, the heartbreak that seemed to cling to everyone in that small Wisconsin town. But no matter how far she traveled, it always felt like a shadow followed her. This trip to Nice wasn't supposed to be about the past, it was supposed to be a break, a moment for her to breathe. Yet fate had a way of weaving Genoa City back into her life when she least expected it. She checked into a modest hotel off the main square, far from the luxurious resorts tourists often sought. Lola wasn't chasing glamour, she was chasing peace. She dropped her bag on the bed and pulled open the curtains, letting in the golden French sunlight. But just as she took in the picturesque view, something nagged at her. It wasn't just her imagination, she swore she'd seen a familiar figure outside the cafe across the street. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with an unmistakable caution. Her heart jumped, the name forming in her mind before she could stop it. Kane Ashby. Lola blinked and shook her head. Kane had disappeared from Genoa City years ago, swallowed up in a tangle of rumors, schemes, and whispers of unfinished business. She'd heard speculation that he was working under an alias, that he had debts to settle, enemies to outrun, and secrets too heavy to bring back home. But what on earth would he be doing in Nice? And why now, just as she was trying to carve out a moment of quiet in her life? Curiosity tugged at her stronger than fear. That's how Lola found herself seated at the very cafe terrace an hour later, sunglasses perched on her nose, nursing a cappuccino she didn't even want. Her eyes scanned the tables, pretending to read the menu but really searching for that familiar jawline, that slightly furrowed brow that had once made Lily Winters fall hopelessly in love. Then she saw him. He was dressed simply, in a linen shirt and dark trousers, but there was an edge to his demeanor, his gaze flickered from table to table, scanning, as if expecting to be followed. His hair was a bit longer, streaked faintly with gray, but it was him. Kane. Her breath caught. But it wasn't just seeing him, it was realizing he was hiding. His shoulders were tense, his every move deliberate, like a man walking through a world of mirrors, never certain what might jump out at him. For a brief second, she thought about walking away, leaving him to whatever twisted story he was living now. But then Kane glanced up, and their eyes locked. For the briefest instant, she saw recognition. His mouth parted slightly in shock before he looked away, as if pretending not to know her. That was the mistake. Because now Lola knew she wasn't imagining it, this was Kane Ashby, alive, very real, and desperately trying not to be noticed. She followed him. Not immediately, she was careful. Years of watching Genoa City's tangled dramas had taught her that timing was everything. She left the cafe 10 minutes after he did, keeping to the opposite side of the street, her steps quiet, steady. Kane weaved through the narrow alleys of Nice, as if he'd done it 100 times before. He ducked into a small market, then emerged with a bag of groceries. He wasn't living like a man on vacation, he was living like someone in hiding. Finally, he disappeared into a stone building with ivy crawling up its walls. Lola lingered across the street, her pulse quickening. She felt ridiculous, like some amateur spy, but she couldn't let this go. Not when she'd already seen too much. After a long breath, she crossed the street and slipped inside, trailing behind a pair of tourists who opened the door. The building was quiet, dimly lit, a staircase spiraling upward. She heard footsteps echoing above, and instinct pushed her to follow. When she reached the third-floor landing, she stopped. Kane was fumbling with a key at the end of the hall, groceries balanced in his other hand. And then, as if something inside her snapped, Lola called out his name. Kane. He froze. The bag nearly slipped from his hand. Slowly, he turned, his expression caught between shock and dread. Lola? His voice was low, almost a whisper, as though the very walls might betray him if he spoke too loudly. For a long, heavy moment, they just stared at each other. Time seemed to rewind, pulling them both back into the orbit of Genoa City, where every choice had consequences and every secret eventually clawed its way into the light. Finally, Kane stepped toward her, his jaw tightening. You shouldn't be here. Lola folded her arms, her heart racing. Funny, I could say the same thing. What are you doing in Nice, Kane? Disappearing from everyone's lives, and then, what? Hiding out like a ghost? His eyes darted toward the staircase, as if expecting someone else to appear. Then he grabbed her arm gently but firmly, pulling her into the apartment before she could protest. The door shut behind them with a final click, sealing them inside. The apartment was modest, much like her hotel, clean, but sparse. No photographs, no personal touches, just a man living quietly in the shadows. Kane set the groceries down, running a hand through his hair. You weren't supposed to find me, he muttered. Lola's anger flared. You weren't supposed to disappear, Kane. People thought you were dead, or worse. Do you have any idea what it's like to see someone you knew vanish into thin air? And now here you are, hiding in France like some fugitive. Kane's eyes met hers, sharp and weary. That's because I am a fugitive. The intricate tapestry of daytime drama is woven with threads of coincidence, long-buried secrets, and the inevitable collision of past and present. On The Young and the Restless, a show renowned for its complex character histories and interwoven destinies, such elements are the very lifeblood of its narrative engine. The storyline involving Lola's journey to Nice and her subsequent unmasking of Kane, revealing him to be an old acquaintance, is a quintessential example of this narrative tradition. It is a plot point that resonates far beyond the immediate shock of the reveal, serving as a catalyst for emotional turmoil, a re-examination of personal history, and a significant shift in the power dynamics within the ongoing saga of Genoa City's most formidable families. This sequence of events is not merely a twist for shock value, it is a meticulously crafted exploration of identity, deception, and the profound consequences that arise when a carefully constructed facade is shattered. The journey begins with Lola, a character whose own trajectory in Genoa City has been marked by resilience, heartbreak, and a steadfast moral compass. Her decision to travel to Nice is itself born from a place of deep emotional investment, likely tied to the well-being of her brother, Arturo, or perhaps entangled with the complex web of relationships surrounding the Abbott family, with whom she has become connected through her marriage to Kyle Abbott. Her mission is painted with urgency and purpose. She is not a tourist seeking leisure on the French Riviera but a woman on a quest for truth. This immediately elevates the stakes and frames her not as a passive participant in the drama unfolding around her but as an active agent of revelation. Her presence in Nice signifies that the secrets of Genoa City are not confined by geography, they have a global reach, and the pursuit of justice or clarity often requires crossing oceans. The figure she pursues, known as Kane, exists in this context as an enigmatic and presumably threatening presence. The alias itself is suggestive of both menace and deception. A cane can be a support, but it can also be a weapon, and its use often implies a need for assistance in walking, a metaphor for a hidden vulnerability or a false presentation of strength. In the world of soap operas, an alias is rarely chosen at random, it often reflects a key aspect of the character's true nature or mission. This Kane is operating under a guise, his true identity concealed behind a veil of European intrigue and criminal or corporate subterfuge. He is, from Lola's perspective, a problem to be solved, a mystery to be unraveled, a direct threat to the stability of her family unit. Her approach to unmasking him is therefore charged with a mixture of fear, determination, and the courage that comes from protecting one's own. The moment of revelation is the fulcrum upon which the entire storyline balances. The tension is built through Lola's investigation. Perhaps she follows a lead, pieces together contradictory information, or stages a confrontation. The audience is led to expect a formidable adversary, a stranger whose reveal will introduce a new wave of chaos into the lives of the characters. The genius of the twist, however, lies in its subversion of this expectation. The removal of the metaphorical mask does not reveal a stranger but a familiar face. The shock is not one of introduction but of recontextualization. Kane is not a new player, he is a known quantity, an acquaintance from the past whose sudden reappearance in this deceptive and antagonistic role is profoundly destabilizing. The emotional and narrative impact of this revelation cannot be overstated. For the audience, it creates an instant and powerful connection between a current, unfolding mystery and established character history. It transforms the plot from a standalone conflict into a deeply personal vendetta or a tragic misunderstanding rooted in past events. The question immediately arises, why? Why would this person, someone known to Lola and by extension to her circle in Genoa City, adopt a false identity and engage in activities that are harmful to them? The answers to this question are manifold and provide rich fodder for future storylines. Perhaps it is a case of mistaken identity or a coerced involvement in a larger scheme. Perhaps it is an act of revenge for a perceived past wrong, a grievance that festered in silence for years before erupting in this calculated and deceptive manner. Or perhaps it is a desperate act of self-preservation, where the individual believed that assuming a new identity was the only way to escape a dire threat, unintentionally bringing that threat to the doorstep of old acquaintances. For Lola, the psychological effect is profound. The act of unmasking is typically accompanied by a surge of power, the victor revealing the truth and dismantling the enemy's deception. However, when the enemy is revealed to be someone she knows, that power is instantly complicated by a whirlwind of betrayal, confusion, and a forced reevaluation of her own past interactions with this person. Every memory she has of them is now cast in a new, suspicious light. Were there signs she missed? Was their previous friendship or acquaintance ever genuine, or was it all a prelude to this moment? Her triumph in discovering the truth is inevitably tempered by a deep sense of personal violation. The threat is no longer an abstract, foreign entity, it has a name and a shared history, making it far more intimate and, in many ways, more dangerous. The ramifications extend far beyond Lola's personal shock. The intelligence she gathers in Nice becomes a crucial piece of leverage and information that she brings back to Genoa City. Her return is not as she left, she is now the bearer of a seismic truth that will ripple through multiple lives. The immediate consequence is the effect on the person most directly connected to Kane, likely his wife, Lily Winters, or the entire Abbott family if the deception is financially motivated. The reveal that Kane is alive and operating under an alias would be earth-shattering for Lily, whose emotional history with him is a long and tortured saga of loss, resurrection, and ultimately, moving on. To learn that he is not only alive but has been deliberately concealing his identity would force her to confront a devastating betrayal. It would nullify her grief, mock her process of healing, and throw her current romantic life into disarray. The emotional whiplash of such a revelation is a classic soap opera trope, designed to mine every ounce of anguish and conflict from a character's situation. Furthermore, the exposure forces Kane out of the shadows and into a position where he must account for his actions. The carefully constructed narrative he built for himself in Nice collapses in an instant. He is no longer in control of the game, his secret is out, and the power dynamic shifts decisively to those he deceived. This forces him into a corner, where his subsequent actions become unpredictable and potentially more desperate. He must either flee, fight to maintain his deception, or finally come clean and explain his motivations. This moment of reckoning is where the true depth of the character is revealed. Is he a villain, acting out of greed or malice? Or is he a tragic figure, a victim of circumstances who saw no other way out than to fabricate a new life, even if it meant hurting the people he once cared about? The storyline allows for a nuanced exploration of morality, where clear-cut heroes and villains are replaced by flawed individuals making catastrophic choices. The fallout also serves to unite or further fracture the core families involved. For the Abbotts and the Winters, this shared crisis could become a rallying point. A common enemy, especially one that has betrayed them from within, can often bridge otherwise contentious divides. Jack, Kyle, Billy, and Lily may find themselves in an uneasy alliance, pooling their resources and intellect to deal with the threat that Cain now represents to their business, their family legacies, and their emotional security. Conversely, the revelation could sow deeper seeds of distrust. If some characters had suspicions and others defended Cain, or if his actions are tied to a specific family member's past misdeeds, the blame and recrimination could create new, lasting schisms. On a broader thematic level, this storyline of unmasking taps into a central anxiety of the modern world, the fragility of identity and the ease with which it can be manipulated. In an era of digital personas and curated online lives, the question of who we can truly trust is ever present. The fear that someone close to us is not who they claim to be is a potent source of drama. Cain's deception is an extreme manifestation of this fear, making the storyline resonate on a level that is more than just melodrama. It is a reflection of contemporary existential uncertainties. In conclusion, Lola's trip to Nice and her successful unmasking of Cain is far more than a simple plot twist in the ongoing narrative of the young and the restless. It is a meticulously layered story event that functions on multiple levels. It is a character-defining moment for Lola, solidifying her role as a resilient and proactive force within the narrative. It is a devastating emotional earthquake for characters like Lily, forcing them to confront a betrayal of the highest order and reassess their entire recent history. It is a catalyst for shifting alliances and conflicts within the powerful dynasties of Genoa City. And most importantly, it is a classic exploration of the soap opera's most cherished themes, the return of the past, the devastating power of secrets, and the complex, often painful, truth that lies behind the masks people wear. The revelation that Cain is an acquaintance does not end the story, it truly begins it, opening a new chapter of explanation, confrontation, and redemption that will captivate the audience and define the trajectories of these characters for months to come.